because Darius is not in yet. Um, the, roll call. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we don't do roll call anymore. So the next point will be to adopt the agenda.
Motion to adopt.
I second.
The agenda has been adopted. Do we call it?
You have to say all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Moving along. Public comments.
I've Chris Lorkowski here. Chris, she's on Zoom. I'll promote you to panelist, Chris, and then we should be able to hear you.
Good.
All right, Chris, if you unmute your mic, you should be good to go.
There we go. Thank you. I just wanted to let the committee know that I have forwarded a link to SB 960 for the benefit of this committee. And SB 960 requires Caltrans to prioritize road improvements for pedestrians, bike riders, and public transit users whenever it performs maintenance or does road work. In other words, these upgrades should take place when they're doing their regular maintenance. It should just be something that gets added on. And I thought that the committee would want to know, particularly if there's any activity taking place on Bayshore that Caltrans will be dealing with. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing that. So for the record, Derry has arrived, and it looks like we have a person in that may want to comments.
Oral communication is for items not on the agenda. So if your item is on the agenda, that we'll ask you to talk then.
The lady's declining that opportunity, sir.
Oh, I see. Thank you for that clarification. So now I'm going to hand it to Darius as he's the chair.
Thank you, and apologies for being late. So the next item then, I guess after public comment, is approval of minutes. So hopefully you had a chance to review the minutes from September 17th. Can I get a motion to adopt and approve those minutes?
Motion to adopt.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alrighty, the minutes are approved for September 17th. Thank you. Alrighty, moving on then to old business, day in the park discussion.
Yes, I think last meeting we talked a little bit about the kind of handouts we would want to have at our day in the park. So I'm just going to quickly go through those. This one is, of course, about AB 413. It's pretty similar to the one that we posted on the city website, but you would just have very general info. What is daylighting? How can it help? Kind of some general information about the law. And then striping changes around town as they've been applied in Brisbane so far, and just letting the public know that more changes are to come. So that's the first handout. Second handout is related to the residential parking permit program. Again, just providing general info similar to what's already existing on the city website, just laying out the parameters, and also a quick paragraph about if another neighborhood is interested, or another block is interested in having a residential parking permit program, how they can do so. And then just this will be a 24 by 36 banner for the committee that'll be posted on a board. That'll be just, the only difference from last year is I added your guys' names just to add a little something to the banner. And then finally, this will be the QR code survey. It's a Google survey with, again, pretty general info, but so asking if someone wishes to share where they, what area of Brisbane they live in, they can do so. General questions again, do you feel Brisbane is currently bike ped friendly? Which category do you feel should be a high priority? And then any specific suggestions or improvements at specific examples, just kind of keeping it as open-ended as possible. And then given that AB 413 will start being enforced in 2025, we of course want to get the word out. So this last one right here is just asking the public, are you aware of this new law? And then just even more open-ended, just any feedback below. And that's what I have for us to hand out at Day in the Park. So we have those two handouts. We'll have the survey, and then whatever questions the public approaches us with.
I guess on that survey, is there an area to fill out for like their information? That's on the top, I guess, or when they first sign in, that would be the account on top. Just making sure we have a way to contact them, if they want to get contacted for further.
Yeah, I can add that, like optional. If you want to leave a number, leave name, or anything like that. You can add that.
Yeah, wonderful. And for the printouts, how many roughly were you thinking to?
I was thinking 25 of each. Just seems like a pretty reasonable number. Worst case, we can come back here and print, not too far.
Yeah, we'll both be at the booth, so one of us can run back and make copies.
Yeah, we'll be there.
You guys are going to be there.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that is a nice package. Thank you for putting that together.
I'm seeing that Chris Florikowski has her raised. Chris, if you want to comment on this item on the agenda, you can unmute because you're already promoted to panelist.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. And thank you for putting this together. This will be valuable for us and for communicating with the city council when they're coming up with the work plan. I'd suggest that you divide some of these questions so that it's easier to get statistics. For example, do you feel Brisbane is currently a pedestrian bicyclist friendly, or why not? Have a yes and no for easy statistics, and then the why or why not be a separate question. And on the one for SB 413, can we?
So at the bottom right here.
Yeah, can we explain that what we're implementing is daylighting to make the streets safer for people crossing the street rather than just simply restricting parking? When we present it that way, we're not encouraging support for the initiative. We're just giving people a reason to get grumpy up. Thank you.
Yeah, I could do something like AB 14. AB 14 is a safety countermeasure to avoid accidents at crosswalk approaches, also known as daylighting. Then leave the same information and then the question: are you aware of this new law? But thank you for that.
Thank you for the comments. Any other, I guess, public comments at this time before? I guess first, any other committee members want to make a comment on either of these items or the forms? I know you also prepared a couple of other items potentially that will be there. Yeah. Wonderful to hand out. I guess any other comments from the committee on either of these items here before? No? Yeah. Any other public comment, I guess, on this item? Wonderful. Anything from staff otherwise to? In addition to, I guess there's a sign-up sheet as well on the for our time slots. Has that been?
Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. There's 2 slots left for. We just need Linda and Christian. You don't necessarily have to decide now, but it's but it would be nice. But 12:30 to 2 is one option. Is one option that's available, and then 1 to 2:30, and then we have the 3 earlier shifts have been reserved already.
So I could choose either or. Do you have a preference, Linda?
No, actually, I'm going to be at the park the entire time, so I can float in and cover our booth anytime.
So put me down for the 12:30 to 2.
All right, sounds good.
So help us close it up, Linda.
Hmm?
Help us close it up.
Go for it.
Great. Thank you all for volunteering as well. That should be a good event there.
And if you're not too busy, hang around with someone who's already there. It's always nice to have a team.
The way they were set up, there's a little bit of overlap between
Oh,
you
good.
guys.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not just one member, and then of course we'll be there as well.
Okay, great.
I guess just one quick comment in terms of the handout. You guys think it might make sense to put our calendar goals, just that might initiate a conversation, or no? It's just a curiosity, you know.
You mean the work plan itself?
Yes, the work plan.
We could have one copy of it. How about that?
Okay.
I do have one other thing. I'm bringing the pinwheels, and I wasn't sure that you would all be in agreement, so I haven't put the stickers on yet. So I'm going to bring the stickers and the pinwheels, and before you hand them out, if you'll put the stickers on them so they're compliments of the committee. All right, thank you.
Thank you for the ideas. Cool. Yeah. And then the QR code will be there for scanning. People can fill that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I already have it printed out, tested it, works, so we're good to go.
Thank you. Yeah. I guess if there's nothing else on this matter, do we move on to new business then? All right. For new business, investigation of potential one-way streets on Mariposa and Monterey between Visitacion and Solano. Staff, you want to maybe start, with a brief of where we left off and what the sort of status here is?
Well, we have this storyboard that was prepared by our GIS analyst, Bob Sage. The staff, Karen, Randy, and I looked at it earlier. discuss about what we want to talk about, and I will pass it off to Randy.
Could you full screen this for us?
Let me see, can I?
It's a great idea.
Okay. Better?
That's all right, yeah.
Yeah,
thank you.
okay.
All right, we there?
Yeah, first.
Okay, great. All right, Honorable Chair, committee members, good evening. Randy Bro, Public Works Director and City Engineer for this fine city. I know I only appear here irregularly. I tend to be a fly on the wall watching the fine work the committee and the assigned staff members do. I'm here on this item tonight just because I'm the staff member that's had the most contact time with it. The issues that we're trying to fix are things that were really first identified, I believe, 10 years ago when the city was participating in the development of our local hazard mitigation plan. This is a study that California Office of Emergency Services requires us to do on a reoccurring basis. That's when it was first identified. And then the other issue was identified also when North County Fire Authority developed what they call a pre-attack plan for wildfires, as they started to identify ingress routes. And we started to look at what some of those streets were and realizing that we're having some challenges and some conflicts. And also I want to just come here and help refresh the issue, just because I know over the last year or so, the city council was very, very precise in the things they wanted you to focus on. They absolutely wanted you to do the parking permit program, which it was indeed yeoman's work. It was a lot of heavy lifting that you had to do. Change is always difficult here in Brisbane. And then you got double slammed with AB 413 and the daylighting and, you know, the state's decision to impose that on every city, and really in a relatively short time frame. You know, they only gave city law enforcement a year before they started enforcing that. So a year of warnings, and then right away we're going to roll into enforcement. And this is a difficult thing. People aren't understanding why we're losing parking, particularly in a town like Brisbane, where parking is already a little bit challenged to begin with. So what I want to do tonight is I want to go through what staff has preliminary prepared as what we think is defining the issue, so that we have something that we can share with the citizens that are going to be in the impacted neighborhood. Of course, we're going to talk with them. We're going to get their feedback. And unless you have time tonight and or the interest, I believe the thought is that at the next meeting, after we've absorbed your comments and prepared them and moved them into the slideshow, the slide deck, that then Karen and Tomas will come back and you can start talking about a schedule for when you're going to go out and meet people, whether it's going to be door to door, whether we're going to have, you know, meets and greets where we do things out there. On the utility sides of things, we've done that. You know, we will go out and meet people in the evening. We'll get together and have some hot dogs and sodas for people, and we'll go out on a weekend morning and have coffee and orange juice and donuts and let people come and talk. But I'll leave it up to the committee's judgment, working with staff, on how you want to do that. So anyway, here we go. With that, I'm going to go into the slide deck. You can see there's only 14 slides here, and this is the number one. This is uphill going to Solano for those of you that are going to the pool or taking your kids to Littman or dropping them off at the daycare at Silver Spot. You're really familiar with this term, this right-hand turn. I think 9 times out of 10, what you'll find there is that you're going to break traction when you make that right-hand turn. The people that have lived next to there complain about that all the time on a regular basis. Really, one of the more important challenges, though, is it's really difficult for fire apparatus to get up there. The engines can barely make it. Our engine usually knows that because it's our crews and they've traveled around there. There are other apparatus that are bigger that come from other cities. South San Francisco has an interesting unit. It's called Quint 62, which is a combination between a truck and an engine, in that it has a pumper and then it also has a ladder on it. It struggles to get up that hill. And just because of the existing radius of that hill, the ladder trucks, have an incredible difficulty getting up there. So that's one problem that we have in Mariposa at Solano. Next slide, please. One of the other problems we have there, and again, for those of you who've done that, you recognize that it's a stop. You've got an uphill stop there and you're sitting there, and that view to the left is challenging. And people are coming down that road. That's a narrow road along Solano. People are trying to avoid the cars that are parked on either side of the street. So sometimes it becomes a challenge, like, oh, did I pull out? Did somebody slow down for me? Is somebody being aware of it? So that's another issue there. Next slide, please. Here we come, Monterey. This is a look uphill Monterey, and you're all familiar with this. Monterey is really a one-way at a time road, right? And that's not the only road in town that's this way. But the challenge we have here is that if an engine was trying to get up that hill when that car is coming down, there are a few places for that car to get out of the way. I mean, certainly I found that in the 24 years that I've worked here is that people tend to be very polite with each other. And if you're not in a big hurry, it's not a big deal. But if you're rolling code 3 and you're trying to get to a fire, it could become a big deal. So we go to the next slide, please. So here we go. So here's a demonstration of what our worst nightmare is. The white cars are symbolizing citizens that are evacuating or trying to egress the town. And what we're concerned about is that people are going to do what they do every day. So if you live on one of the upper streets and you come down that hill every day and you go down Monterey, that's what you're going to do. That's the mind neural muscular path that exists in your brain. You're not going to think that it's an emergency and I would take a different street. You're going to do the same thing you've done every day. And in this particular case, we've got 2 engines sitting in the queue trying to get up the hill. So that worries us. So next slide, there we go. We're going up to the next one. So here's the next one. And so this is what we're talking about doing. We're talking about making Monterey a one-way uphill and Mariposa a one-way downhill. Okay, next slide.
You want to talk about Inyo? At Inyo at
No, not yet.
Mariposa's? Okay.
Not yet. We'll get there. So what we're talking about here, so now we think we have fixed that problem. We think we no longer have people trying to make a challenging right-hand turn, Mariposa to Solano, where you're breaking traction, where you're not seeing traffic possibly coming from the left, and also a difficult turn for fire apparatus. And we also have a situation where over the years, what we'll have with signage and such is people coming from the upper streets will know, I have to come down, I get to the intersection with Solano, I turn left, and I come down Mariposa. So the next slide. So of course, part of the question is, well, how are we going to implement that? So we make it so that Mariposa doesn't become a speeding situation or doesn't get overused. So what we've started to implement in here, and we've got some closer pictures in there. This is, no, leave it. Yeah, go back just for half a second, just because I want to show. So we've got a couple of items on here at the bottom of Mariposa where it joins Inyo. We are proposing a rain guard of a sort, and it's intentionally put on the left side of the road for a couple of reasons. Number one, it forces you to slow down a little bit as you're coming down that hill, and it pushes you to the right. So you make a little bit of it's a mini chicane is what we call that. And we want it where it is at that point, because also if somebody's coming down that hill with a trailer or with a slightly larger vehicle, say like a big FedEx truck, right, even, then they have enough radius to make that turn into Inyo. They can make that left turn and get into Inyo. One of the other really creative things that we've got in there is Karen just brought this back from her travels up in Bend, Oregon on her most recent mini vacation, where you've got those small little white rectangles. And what we're finding there is that they're using those very effectively around Bend. And what they are is they become a visual narrowing effect. So as people are driving down the road, it doesn't change the width of the road, but people get uncomfortable driving over things that they perceive to be obstacles they perceive in their way. So that white block makes you want to drive towards the center between them. And because you feel restricted, it slows you down. And it's very much the analogy that I give to people that I think most of us have driven. If you've ever driven down a freeway where they're doing work in the median next to the number 1 lane, and they put that K-rail right up to the edge line, okay? That hasn't changed the width of that lane at all. That lane is still feels 12 foot wide, but you don't want to drive next to it because you feel that barrier like, oh, wow, something doesn't feel right here. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give people a visual cue, a visual sense that they should slow down. If we go to the next, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chair, yeah.
Is this a physical barrier then, or just a little bump, or is it just
No,
paint?
it's just white dots on the ground. It's just
Yeah.
white boxes on the ground.
No speed hump. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And so this is a view looking up Mariposa. So this is where you see the rain garden there that's circled. You see the do not enter sign. You see the right turn only onto Inyo. And next slide, coming along here. This is looking downhill at Mariposa. It shows you those white rectangles that we're using to effectively narrow. Because the road there actually, the Mariposa is one of the streets that we includes Randy and it includes the fire chief who is trying to keep roads in compliance with the California Fire Code happy. Because right now the distance between those 2 white lines is 20 feet. And the reason we want 20 feet is number one, because it's California Fire Code and we've adopted the California Fire Code, and so that's what we try and keep. But the other issue is that, and what not a lot of people realize unless you've been on an engine or you've been out with response, is that engine's over 8 feet wide to begin with. And when they open their doors to get to their equipment, like to save your life if you've had a heart attack, or to get out hoses if your house is on fire, that thing all of a sudden becomes 12 to 14 foot wide. And that's before you've talked about people moving around on either side of it. So that's why we're trying to keep it that dimension. We're not trying to make any street less safe, any street less compliant with the California Fire Code, but we're also trying to put these other features in here, these traffic control features, to keep the traffic slowed down, acknowledging it's a residential street. It ought to be at a residential speed. There are people that live on the street. People walk their dogs on the street. Kids walk on the street. We've got to keep it safe for everyone. So next slide, please. And then it talks about the signage that we would have Solano as you're coming down from Humboldt. You know what, the signage you would be faced with telling you that you're going to make a left-hand turn, putting a no entry onto Monterey. Again, please. So this is a different issue, but it's related, okay? So we've been talking about Mariposa and Monterey from Visitation to Solano. Now, the challenge we've been having up on Solano is this, is that there's a sidewalk there with a rolled curb. The street is a little bit narrow right now. It's substandard. We're at about the 14-foot mark. The issue that we're having is that vehicles are parking on that sidewalk and nearly completely occluding that parking lot. So one of the conversations, and because it's on this same stretch we're thinking about, one of the conversations we want to have with the community is, and I think it should be the neighbors, the people that live there, should decide, do you want that to be a sidewalk or do you want it to be a parking area? Because it can't be both. And it can't be both because of the California Vehicle Code. California Vehicle Code says you park on a sidewalk, you get a ticket. And that's what's been happening lately. And staff is completely agnostic about the answer. It's one or the other. But as I joke, as the chief of police and I joke about this a little bit, it can't be one or the other. It's like saying somebody's a little bit pregnant. Well, you're either pregnant or you're not. This is either a street, this is either a sidewalk or a parking area. We have ways to deal with both of those, but we would like to ask that the committee, as you're doing outreach for the issue about one-way, also look into this for us because it's in the same area. It would seem like we're trying to hide something from the community if we don't address this with them at the same time. So we'd like to do that. Next slide. We're getting pretty close to the end here. And this is just what it would look like if we decided, well, we want to make it a parking area, then we would just put up a sign that says sidewalk closed and give pedestrians a place where there's a crosswalk to get across the street. And last slide. And this is if we decide it's a no parking area and that it's going to be a sidewalk, we just put up no parking signs. So one or the other. I would imagine that the fire community would be happier with this, but they're not unhappy with the way things are right now, so they'll live with it. They're not going to be objections to either one of the two standards. And with that, I will stop rambling and be happy to answer any questions the committee would have, or the public.
Nice presentation. Thank you. Yeah, open up the committee first, I guess, for comment, questions.
Thank you, Randy. I had a question cross my mind when we were looking at Mariposa Street.
Yes.
And you were talking about the width of the street and the fire trucks opening. Does emergency equipment have the right to go against a one-way street if it's faster to get to a victim? Like if a house was on fire, like at Inyo.
So the answer is yes, but it's a caveat at yes. And the caveat is that emergency equipment with their lights and sirens on are asking for the right of way.
Okay.
They're not taking the right of way. And that's an important point that certainly both the police and the fire department remind their employees of all the time. Because you can't just say, it's kind of like me. If I'm a civilian driver and I'm stopped at a green light, I can't just go blazing through it without looking. I still have a responsibility to look and make sure a car is not coming through. The fire and police folks have the same responsibility, but they can.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Randy, that was a very good, thorough presentation, very informative. So I make some notes here. The width of Monterey is narrow. Is narrower than Mariposa, and if we go through the change, we have a similar problem in Mariposa as the one you described in Solano, where people are parking on the street. Are we going to keep the same width and still park on the? I'm sorry, people are parking on the sidewalks. Are we going to keep the same width of the street of Mariposa? And people are going to still be parking on the sidewalks, or?
So let me answer that in some detail. So the answer to that goes back to 1977. In 1977, the city got a federal grant to reconstruct the streets. And Linda, you've been here perhaps that long. You remember when the streets had dirt gutters and such. And so they went back and they rebuilt them all. And one of the things that they did on the lower streets, including Mariposa in this location, is that they intentionally built rolled curbs. And so I'm here in the lane, the sidewalk is to my right. And to the right, they placed rows of delineating brick lines. And those brick lines certainly appear to be part of the sidewalk, but they were intended to identify legal parking spaces. So when we've gone through there in the ensuing years since 77, is the measurements we've made for where the white line goes from that starts at the edge of the brick and then goes out 7 to 8 feet to create a legal parking space. So the answer to your question is no. Police do not enforce it on Mariposa where those brick lines exist, because that is a legal parking space. The challenge that's happening up at Solano is that Solano was not designed that way. So Solano doesn't have those brick delimiters that tell you you can park up to and on these bricks.
Nor the width on that sidewalk that we
Right,
were discussing.
right. Everything's a lesson in history in this community. And you go back, you're like, oh my God, I go back. No, we don't just go back to 61 when we were founded. We go back to 1907 when people started moving here after the earthquake. So, it's
So that
always
brick is
exciting.
the top right corner. That's kind of the brick that you're seeing there. That's okay.
That's it. That
Good
is
to know.
exactly it. Thank
Yeah.
you. Good eye. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. That's it.
Wonderful. Other comments?
Although that
questions?
one in particular, though, we have gone
Yeah.
back. As you can see, we red curved that
Is
one.
red, yeah.
Yeah, because the turns were too tight.
So I think also in terms of, we were approaching this as trying to do both street at the same time, Monterey and Mariposa. And now that you explained to us the other issue with Solano, I guess it's an open question. Should we throw that in the mix and try to, work through that too as well, since we're going to be doing this exercise?
So the city manager has told me that he would like that included in there. So I work for the man, so I have to say, yes, I would suggest you do that. I think it's a brilliant idea. My boss thinks it's a good idea, so do I.
Anything else, Christian?
I mean, to me, it makes sense, but I guess if you want to ask the rest of the committee if they have any opinion on it.
Absolutely. Sure. That's what we're here for, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question, or rather a comment. Some years ago, I was with my brother driving up Mariposa Street and turning left onto Solano.
Oof, yeah.
And it was a rough turn. We got up to the top. In the intersection, we got broadsided. So I'm wondering if there's a stop sign necessary on Solano right before Mariposa.
So that's an interesting question. And in its current configuration, maybe that's something we should look at a little harder. But I think if we do make it a one-way street, the need for that goes away. Because then traffic's only
Solano,
going.
on Solano's not going to be a one-way, is it?
No, but Mariposa will be. So you're not going to have people coming up Mariposa and making that left.
Oh, that's
You're not going to have people coming up Mariposa and making that right and not seeing. Just
okay.
everybody's
But
going to
what
be going
about the
down.
people coming from Solano,
The pool?
from the pool?
Well, I think the difference is that when you're coming from the pool and you come around that corner, you've got it's a straight corridor, right? You
Okay.
can see all the way to the intersection with Humboldt.
Okay.
So your risk of being broadsided is pretty limited, pretty small, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'd like to take a look at that intersection more as far as traffic patterns and who's needing to slow down or stop or something in order to make that really safe for the people that walk there.
So I think that's a fair question. I think we should probably table that, though, until we go out and get the outreach from the impacted neighborhood and see what they think about the solution. Because what we end up doing triggers what other improvements you might want to make. I mean,
Right.
if the community says, no, hell no, there's no way we want these to be changed, then, that may be what the council decides to do. The council does tend to listen to their community, I think.
Okay.
But if the neighborhood says, yes, we see the potential safety impacts and we think that's a good idea, then we know we're looking at something different. So we have to analyze a different set of paradigms.
Okay. I'm sure we'll have a plan soon. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess I have a question. Coming down, I guess, is it Humboldt then? You can go in either direction. If you just kind of go to the top level one, coming down, I guess, from Humboldt. Maybe that's the one, yeah. So in that case, you could go either then left to Solano or right, but you could not go straight down Monterey and then Mariposa.
That's correct. Yes,
Okay.
sir. You got it.
Cool. Any other questions from the committee? Anything?
So if Mariposa does become a one-way, does Monterey have to become a one-way the other direction, or could it still remain a two-way street?
Well, it could, but it doesn't solve the fire ingress problem.
I'm just thinking, like, if we go out and talk to
Sure.
constituents, is that
Well,
gonna
it
be-
solves the set of problems at Mariposa right-hand turn to Solano. It definitely solves those. It doesn't solve the issue of engines coming into town and responding and having to deal with evacuees.
If there's no other committee questions, maybe we'll open it to the public as well. Any public comments? Please go ahead and step forward. Yeah. Yeah, I think you can come on up to the mic. Yeah. And I see your hand also, Chris, in the queue.
Thanks for saying that, Derek. I was going to let you know, but you got.
Our meetings are recorded and available on YouTube and television, and it won't get picked up if you don't use the mic.
Welcome, dressed up. My name is Shelley Carter. I live in the 400 block of Monterey. That's my gray house in the slide. I'm glad to hear that you value community input. That was one question that my neighbors had. Monterey trucks especially travel very fast already on Monterey, going up the hill. I, of course, value all the safety features that are being proposed. I hope that if it's in the best interest of everyone to turn Monterey into a one-way street going up where cars are already speeding and trucks are already speeding, that there be some kind of signage that says no trucks or something. And I think that you'll hear more from the neighbors, but that's a big concern. I'm wondering about the cars parking on the sidewalk because I have 4 dogs that I walk every day. Every sidewalk has cars on them all over Brisbane. So I'm wondering why this particular area is being designed for tickets and parking changes. That's all.
Great, thank you for the comment. Are we allowed to ask questions as well?
Yeah,
Follow-up?
sure, sure.
I guess let's go. Is the speeding uphill more prominent than downhill speeding? I guess for trucks. Okay, no. And thank you, Shelley, for the comments and question. I guess
I have a quick question. Are you talking about commercial trucks or
All the trucks.
all the trucks?
The tree
And the speed
trimmers.
limit is 15 miles per hour already on that street.
I don't think anyone knows that. I mean, I have a porch where I sit outside with my dogs and I can see the trucks, I hear the trucks, all kinds of trucks, delivery trucks, huge, huge trucks zooming up the hill.
Okay, well, maybe that's something we can discuss as far as implementing traffic calming measures there too. There's several, but appreciate your input. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, well, through the chair, I think one of the things we ought to do is that I don't know that that we or the police department have received that complaint yet, but certainly they've been doing some very active police operation, POPs, very community-oriented policing that they've gone out and done, and certainly this is an issue we can refer that. I believe Commander Garcia is listening in, so we can have him take a look at that with his staff, and they can go out there and monitor. We've got some pretty sophisticated equipment now that they put out there. It's small. It's smaller. It doesn't even look like a radar detector, so it just sits out there. And I think the last street, we had a citizen complain about Mission Blue, and they went out and monitored for 2-3 day periods and came back with all the totals. So that's the first place to start, because then they can decide. That gives them a sense of, is there speeding? Where is the speeding? What time of day is the speeding? So especially now that we have 2 motor officers, it gives them a good idea of, well, this is when we should put the motor officer out there to slow that down.
Great.
it's a wonderful idea. Yeah, thank you again for that comment. I guess other public comments. Chris, we'll go. Oh, yeah, go ahead. We'll go Chris first, since I think she had her hand up for a while, and then we'll come back. Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm patient. You can take somebody who's in the room first. No
Well, go ahead. You're off mute now, and you've had your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're on.
Okay, so Randy, thank you for the traffic calming at Mariposa and Inyo. I think that's brilliant. I am a little concerned that the person who lives across the street from that might have issues, but I have a feeling that the drawing is not to scale, so that might account for that. If we were to do parking is okay on Solano, it just suggests that we note that there are 2 gates on the residence that's there, and that clearance to those gates somehow will still need to be assured. Because if we allow parking there, people will park right up against the wall. Now, Randy, I don't know how you would handle this. I'll wager you that there are some people who live in that building and say, this is okay because it's mine. But if we aren't clear, you could have someone who doesn't live in that house who tries to park there. So just something to pay attention to. Speeding on Monterey, I really sympathize with the other comment that was made about that. And that's not the first time I've heard about speeding. I hear about speeding all the time, especially on San Bruno. I'm curious, how many speeding tickets does this Brisbane Police Department issue? Or are we just always resorting to warnings? Where is the, how do we make this work? I guess is my question. So that's it. Thank you. And thank you, Randy. Really
Joe, you're welcome.
appreciate
So I'll give Chris 2 comments on that. 'Cause, number one, interestingly enough, it is people that don't live on that street that are parking there right now. At least that's what the reports of tickets are telling us as far as the parking violations. And there are solutions. If the community were to decide that they want that to be parking instead of a sidewalk throughout town, you'll find areas where we've had that problem, where we put in rectangular boxes that have white diagonal lines on it that clearly indicate it's a no parking area. We just did one on Visitation, just down from the Chinese restaurant. They're all across the Sierra Point, like the 900 and 1000 block of that. And we do that everywhere throughout town. As far as speeding tickets, I indicated earlier, I don't think Public Works has ever had a complaint on that. I'm not sure if the police department has. So that's kind of the first step where we have to get a complaint so that we know what's going on. I mean, our officers are out there and enforcing, but they're not always enforcing at the same locations where people have identified a speeding problem unless we're told about it. So now that Commander Garcia has heard about it, I'm sure that something will take place.
Great. Thank you for following up, and thank you for the comment, Chris. Other public comments, please?
Hi everyone, my name's Kaylee. I live on San Benito Road. I came today because I was really interested in what sort of was being decided here and some of the sort of safety measures that you're putting in. And I'm curious to know, at what point is this going to expand across the rest of town? Particularly, I obviously have a vested interest in San Benito. I live near the elementary school. We have no sidewalks. The speeding comment resonates very strongly with me. We see people, trucks, residents, everyone flying down our street both ways all the time, and it's extremely narrow. I'm extremely surprised we have not seen crashes. We have 2 tiny children who could run out into the street at any given point in time, and we'd just love to see some similar safety measures. We also have traffic calming. It's very ineffective. We've got the rumble strips out the front of our house. They're noisy, but it doesn't slow anyone down. So that's my question.
That's really good feedback, because we did spend some time on San Benito walking it and looking particularly at ways for people to get through safer with the convex mirror and the rumble strips, and hadn't heard back. So we have to assume that it's fine if we don't hear back. So I'm really glad that you're here.
Yeah, we actually emailed the council last year. My husband and I both sent separate emails, and so did some of our neighbours. And we received a comment from back saying we'll review it, and then nothing further despite follow-ups. I believe there was a speed monitor placed on sort of a light pole by the school. At that point in time, the school was under the major parking lot construction though, and so there were very effective trucks out on the street, which definitely slowed everyone down. It also meant it was a really ineffective time to actually measure the speed. And we have a camera set up out the front of our house. We've called the police multiple times. We've mentioned it to city council members, but it's a really big concern for us and many of our neighbours as well. My husband at one point in time did speak to someone, and the feedback that he got, or the recommendation he got, was to stand out on the street corner and tell people to slow down, which we actually do, as do many of our neighbours, but obviously not our full-time jobs or a particularly effective thing.
I've done that with a hose,
Yep.
and it's not a good idea.
Not great. We also don't want to cause anyone to crash, so, but yeah.
Thank you for the comments and for coming out and following up on those pieces. Any other questions from the committee or follow-up items directly right now? Otherwise, this is definitely noted. We're going to follow up again and make sure that that's an area we kind of look into San Benito, especially.
Thank you, that'd be
Thank
great.
you very much.
Well, I think
Yeah.
Commander Garcia's to-do list is increasing.
growing,
here,
yes.
So now he's got this is a great place to report these types of concerns.
No, we're
'Cause
very
it shows
happy
up
that
here, we
everyone's
have the
coming
police monitoring. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
thank
to
you.
have people
We'll
in the audience. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Other public comment?
I'm Tim Tresiak. I live on Monterey, 440. The two-way street on Monterey, as weird as it sounds, the accidents we've had on Monterey hitting parked cars have almost, I think probably over the last 30 years, there's probably been 5 going uphill, and I don't remember if there's been one coming downhill. So it's strange that you get people hitting cars going uphill. In fact, one happened maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. So the question we have and the concern we have is the speeding and stuff on Monterey. Changing it to a one-way street, even if it's going uphill, I think is going to actually increase the speed issues, because the way Monterey is built, it's really wide at the beginning of the street, and a lot of people, if you're going uphill, you're staged there, you gotta pull over to the right and wait for people coming down the hill. And that gives people, you know, a 150 or 200 foot stopping point before they start going up the hill, and it actually slows people down. So living right there and with grandkids in front of the house all the time, I think, you know, our concern would be that without that, they're starting from that corner and going full speed and getting that bigger run without having to worry about people coming down the hill. So that would be our concern about that part. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, thank you for coming out. It's clear that going uphill is a very, speeding uphill is even potentially worse than coming downhill, which is surprising to me because it seems counterintuitive, but I think definitely the community is clear on that point. So thank you again. Any other comment from committee or staff on that? To respond? Nope. Wonderful. Thank you again. Any other public comments at this time? Anyone else online on this topic?
Deborah, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. Thank you for letting me speak. And I live on Mariposa Street near the top of the hill, 3 houses down from the top of the hill. And I do agree with Tim that when you have a one-way street, it does increase the speed. I want to point out, you know, having lived on Mariposa Street for 10 years, that when the middle school lets out, the kids are scattering everywhere down that street. They're jaywalking across the street. They're walking on both sides of the street. There's a lot of parents who do the pickups, and they usually go down Mariposa Street. And it's already pretty crazy there with cars and kids. And if you've ever walked up that hill, it's a really steep hill, as you're talking about how hard it is for motor vehicles to make that turn. But when you start going down that street, you pick up speed without even knowing it. So I think the speed issue of having a one-way street going down Mariposa Street, and you have the pickups from the middle school, is something to definitely take a look at, because I think speeding is already a problem on Mariposa, and I don't think it's speeding because people are speeding. It's just you just, that hill just makes your car go. So the traffic calming that you have down at Inyo, I think, is way too late. There's got to be something higher up that keeps people slower on the top of that street. I would hate to have speed bumps because I live there, but something like that to slow those cars down. The other thing I want to bring up living on Mariposa Street is that intersection from Mariposa to Visitation is there's no visibility. You can't see cars coming either direction unless you nose out across the crosswalk into Visitation, where I've almost been clipped a couple times by cars I can't see coming up Visitation because I can't even see them, or easier to see cars coming down. But that is a real problem. I've been asking for a speed four-way speed stop sign at Visitation for a while, but I think if you're going to increase the traffic, and as Tim says, make it a one-way thoroughfare, you're going to have more and more people going down there and having that same issue that we all have on Mariposa Street of no visibility on Visitation. And I know there's a lot of resistance to putting another stop sign on Visitation, but I think it's definitely a dangerous intersection. So that's the end of my comments. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Deborah, for the comments. Would anyone like to respond on the committee? No? Yeah, thank you very much. I think staff?
Sure, I do appreciate those comments and concerns. I'm not here to lobby for one way or another, but certainly if we do go ahead and end up making it one way, I appreciate Deb's concerns. I think we would have to look at the intersection with Visitation if we're going to have more traffic down there on the regular.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's clear there's a lot of public interest in this, and obviously we're in the early phase and need to have much more outreach and kind of figure out how we might get more of the residents to come out and kind of talk to us. So thank you all again for coming out and voicing these opinions and concerns. Anyone else online that would like to comment?
That's everybody.
Is everyone? Wonderful. Thank you. So I think next steps here then, I guess, is oh yeah, please.
So I just want to have some clarification. So in terms of you know, what was being proposed to make Mariposa and Monterey one way, so is it going to stop in Visitation, or is it going to keep going to the other street?
It would end at Visitation.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Just taking it all in.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot, and I think this presentation is helpful to kind of see it all laid out with this piece, but I think also hearing the feedback has been very informative too. I guess next steps here then are sort of a revision of this document as well as more, I guess we should do some outreach and some mapping, but that I guess is not going to happen probably before the next meeting. So the next meeting we'll sort of lay out a plan for next steps.
Yeah, I think, and we'll do that speed survey on Monterey, so we'll have more information there.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah.
Also, I can send you guys this this slide deck. Just take it, review it at your own pace, take it all in, and make sure understand the issue completely before we do the public outreach segment.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I guess, is this something that we might consider having printed out for the day in the park, or is that too early for this topic to start getting outreach, given sort of I think how important this might be for the community?
It's a good
I
question.
think it feels too early because I feel like we want the neighbors to know first.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
the
maybe we
rest
can
of
bring
the
it up sort of
town.
verbally with residents as they come and discuss sort of around town. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Thank you. Cool. All right, moving along then. That completes, I guess, that section of new business. Oh, go ahead, Christian.
So in terms of the very pointed comments from the public, and some of them mentioned that they have brought this up in the past. So my question is, are these going to be logged in, and we're going to have a systematic way to get back to them that we are working on this on their concerns?
Thank you. Great question. I guess.
Well, the intent is to go out and get outreach from all of the neighborhood, as many of the residents as we can. I mean, we've had a sample tonight, and that's great. It's perfect to get a sense of what some people are thinking, but when there's, I don't know how many dozens of homes out there, I don't think that the committee would want to make a recommendation to council based on the input of 5 or 6 people. We want to get out there and see as many as possible. Very, very much like was done for the outreach on Tulare and Thomas. It was almost really surprising how different it was on the 2 streets, and so I think we need to get out there and see what people are thinking. People are going to have different issues. With some people, the issues are going to resonate very much about the ingress egress. Other people are going to have other issues that come up. They're going to have things that staff hadn't thought about. I think we've heard a couple of those tonight. I hadn't thought about the uphill speeds. I really hadn't thought for a moment here about the increased traffic and what impact that would have at the intersection between Mariposa and Visitation. Those are great comments. That's why we're out here. We're not trying to design things without input from the public. So, but we want to make sure that we get enough of an end number. We want to get a big enough set of input to us that we really feel like it's representative of the majority of the people living in that area.
I suppose one way we'll be tracking them is by doing we'll do the minutes, of course, and we'll have everyone's public input there. And I mean, as the process goes along, we'll have that reference to see what kind of comments we received, and as we receive more, we can maybe think about organizing them.
Thank you, Tomas.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And maybe along those lines, also the San Benito issue that came up maybe isn't part of this necessarily, but we should definitely follow up on that. And that's, I think, on the record now, and we will follow up on the speeding there and maybe next steps.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I think, if I recall correctly, Linda and Ibarra worked on that intensively, right? Or part of it?
I remember walking the street, but I kind of remember everybody. I don't remember doing it just as a couple of people. Karen, weren't you there when we walked on San Benito?
I don't think I walked it with you, but the result was that we put down the rumble strips. That was the main
Okay.
thing we were able to do.
So maybe it was me and one other committee member.
Yeah.
I'm a little foggy on that one.
Well, we'll follow up, I guess, to make sure that those sort of actions are helpful. And yeah,
Yeah, I guess where I'm going with this is, we have worked on a lot of, safety issues and we have that data. And so when it comes back, maybe we could look at the data and sort of review what was said or what was agreed, just to make sure that, we are aware of these things, and sometimes there are other issues within the same street, but, we have done work on many things. Okay.
Thanks, Christian. Yeah. Moving on to the next item of new business, then, election of a Complete Streets and Safety Committee Vice Chair. This is an action item because we do not currently have a sitting vice chair, so thank you, Christian, for acting as one today. With that, I guess, are there nominations for a vice chair?
I would like to make a nomination.
Yeah.
And if Emily will accept, I'd like to nominate Emily for Vice Chair of the Complete Street Safety Committee.
I will accept.
Okay, we need to have a vote, I believe.
Yeah. Are there any other nominations?
Oh,
I
any
guess?
other
Yeah.
nominations?
Wonderful. I guess in that case, all in favor of Emily being the vice chair of the Complete Streets and Safety Committee? Aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Anyone opposed? I guess it was all ayes. So
It's
thank you very much. Yeah, unanimous. You are now, thank you very much. And you're now the vice chair. So moving forward, you'll be, the right-hand person here. And then sort of, if, in essence, you'll take over the meeting. So thank you. Yeah. Wonderful. Any other public comment, I guess, on new business? Great. Moving along to announcements. Any announcements?
One thing on the residential parking permit program, I know you guys are aware of it, and we'll talk about it more at the meeting, but we originally had planned for 7 signs on Thomas Avenue for the parking enforcement. Just wanted to let you guys use that we raised that number to 8. I went out there with our inspector, Greg, and there's no set standard for how far they need to be spaced apart. We originally decided 200 feet, but after going out there and looking at the existing infrastructure, specifically the lights that were there, the existing light posts that we're going to place signs on there, we determined that we'll have 4 on each side. So just a small change in the signage on Thomas Avenue for the residential parking permit program. But just wanted to make you guys aware of that.
Great, thank you. Anything else from staff updates? Great, wonderful. Thank you again for coming out. Next up then, I guess, is chair and committee member matters. Are there any chair and committee member matters that anyone would like to bring up? No. Wonderful. Okay. I also don't have anything for today's meeting or matters to bring up. Okay. Wonderful.
I think nothing now also, but by our next meeting, I think we'll know about some of those grants we applied for that we let you guys know about those letters of support. So by next meeting, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have some word back on that.
Don't have staff updates on there.
I think those announcements with staff updates, right?
Oh, yeah, there's some minor revisions to the template internally that went around, so mostly the same, but just changing some of the wording. Like, for instance, oral communications is not public comment, but same idea.
Great.
Thanks for checking that. I thought that too for a second.
Good meeting.
Yeah, wonderful.
you.
Well, in that case, that concludes our meeting. Our next meeting will be set for November 6th. And with that, the meeting is complete and is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
All right, thanks, everyone.